Hey everyone, it's April here with your photo travel guide and fall photo trips. And I have a couple meetup groups and lots going on. I'm always willing to share the information I know and help you make good decisions and hopefully help you plan that lifelong trip to New England or wherever it might be. Uh, let's just jump right in. I'm going to hop on over to a popular forum online. As many of you know, it's TripAdvisor, but there's always lots of questions over there. And you can ask questions there as well, or you can contact me direct. Someone saying they're so excited to plan their fall foliage road trip. And yes, seeing the fall foliage in New England, which when we talk about New England, a lot of us are talking about New Hampshire, Maine, Massachusetts, Vermont for sure is a biggie. Even places further south, but even upstate New York technically gets fall foliage, and there's some beautiful places in New York State, like Ithaca and the waterfalls. You can always think if you're geared into fall colors, there's more places than maybe comes to mind as far as New England. I digress. Right now it looks like they're going these people it's multi-generational, and as I've talked about on other videos, if you've looked, that when you're thinking about multi-generational, sometimes it's important to think about where you're staying. It may not be the best setup to have a hotel room. It might not give you a kitchenette, or it may not give you a gathering place, so you have a little bit more room for your kids to play, or maybe stay connected online. Maybe there's not enough desks if you're trying to do some work, or if you have parents that are maybe a little older that need to take a nap, go to bed earlier, watch different things. Everybody's got different needs. So, this is where you might check into renting an Airbnb. And Airbnb is a big site, VRBO. Personally, when I've kind of checked pricing for whatever reason, I found Airbnb to be a little bit better on the pocketbook. Be sure and you check all of the fees. And if you see something you like, we often get stuck in this culture of like, we see something, that's the price it is, there's no wiggle room. But sometimes there is wiggle room, and sometimes it is worth messaging the owner of the property once you've created a profile and explain, go in depth on who's coming on the trip, who's going to be staying there. All that additional information oftentimes can be the deciding factor of being invited to book that property, and sometimes be given a little bit of a break on price. I know I've done it even with hotels and inns and small bed and breakfast. And that's the other thing. A bed and breakfast is a wonderful way to experience New England. Often they're in historic structures. They'll have a full on wonderful breakfast. But again, is that breakfast going to be good if you have different dietary needs? You might want to call and speak to the owner. You might want to ask about stairs if someone in your party has difficulty with stairs. Many of the bed and breakfasts I stay in, the rooms aren't on the first floor, the rooms are at least on the second floor. And oftentimes they don't always have extra staffing to help you with your bags. That's something that you need to take care of. Going back to this, I digressed a little bit. They want to drive from Washington, D.C. to Lake Placid, which is in upstate New York, which they're starting in the northern part of New York. It's a good plan. September 30th might be a tad early. At least historically, it tends to be a little bit early these last few years. It's hard to say. The weather is, as you can tell, is all over the map. It's snowing here in Vegas today, so anything's possible, and we don't know how that's going to affect the fall colors until we're closer. But technically, the second week of October, you're generally going to have the widest band of fall colors. Weatherchannel.com, a lot of the Forestry Service websites can give you updates. You can look at last year's fall foliage um, stats and kind of get information there. Um, but there's a lot to see. I also like the website travelmath.com. It can find you a halfway point between Washington, D.C. and Lake Placid. I think with all ages, it's important to make plenty of car stops, even if you don't need gas, just to get out of the car, walk around, stop and sit on a bench, eat a sandwich, drink your coffee outside of the car. I think that's really important for everyone, including the driver. So you always want to plan in some stops. And if the stop is somewhat interesting, that makes the whole driving day a whole lot more fun. They mentioned Flume Gorge, and Flume Gorge comes up on a lot of lists to go visit. I love the Flume Gorge, but technically, what the Flume Gorge State Park is there is an entrance fee. I don't know if they're going to have timed entry this year, but it's a narrow canyon with lots of beautiful waterfalls. Because the canyon walls are rock, you're not going to have the trees right there, but you will have lots and lots of wood staircases. So if knees are an issue, you might want to reconsider all of those stairs. It might be something to think about and take a look at the basin instead. I know I've referenced that place a lot. So there's a few tips on the multi-generational trip. If you want more and you realize that I'm talking about your question on TripAdvisor, drop me an email. It's april@aprilart.com. Go to my website, yourphototravelguide.com/contact. I would love to help. Jump on a phone call, see what I can do and create your own custom itinerary, or pay me to review what you've got and add additional day by day information that fits your needs and what your group wants to do. And also then you can blame me if something gets picked and it's poor. um, some of these questions were here yesterday. Not really seeing a lot of new information. RVing, I would definitely get a good guide on RVing, which I believe both the Vermont state website and the New Hampshire website, if you do a good Google search, I know there's some good RV guides. Definitely be aware of how high your RV is, and don't just assume the covered bridges are going to be high enough or wide enough for you to drive through. Unfortunately, I've heard a lot of horror stories of RVs, pickups, campers getting stuck in these covered bridges, and that's not how you want to be handling your vacation time. Also, for campgrounds, let me see if they've put in some points here. There is some beautiful camping. All the way Lubec, Maine is all the way on the border with Canada. It is a beautiful place to go. You might want to reserve a campground if you intend to spend time around Acadia National Park. I would put in that reservation now, especially if you're looking at October, and any popular location. They also mentioned a couple places in Canada, which I'm not quite as familiar with. I would also do a Google search. There's some great campgrounds, by the way, that are really well located in Vermont and New Hampshire. And if you're able to park your RV, your camper, and then do day trips during the day, that can be a great way to explore these areas in the fall. And again, cook your own meals, pick up food. I often point out the country stores, which a lot of people look at these country stores. They usually have maybe a gas pump out front and they look kind of dilapidated, but those often in the back have a whole counter of freshly made sandwiches, hot soups, homemade local pies and pastries. A couple of them have a pot-bellied wood burning stove back there and you can warm up. There's usually, things have changed. Sometimes if you're purchasing something, a restroom in these country stores, and lots of local goodies. So it's kind of like an all-in-one store, and definitely worth making a stop. And I've picked up food at a lot of these places, really good eats for picnics and priced a little bit better, especially when the bulk of your day you want to be spending outside. I think we forget as we go through summertime that when we get to October, daylight ends in October in many of these places by 6 o'clock, 6:15. It's starting to get dark. So you're not going to be able to be looking at the fall colors and walking the waterfalls and doing all those wonderful outdoor things after 6 p.m. So if you don't get up early and start your day, and if you're enjoying a sit down breakfast and then you sit down again for lunch, you're taking out easily a couple hours from your day there. So that's the other thing to keep in mind, is just pacing, where you're pacing. We also get used to in California and Texas and some of these big states that it's a long distance to get to somewhere, but we're going to hop on the interstate and get there quickly. There's not a lot of east-west routes that go across New Hampshire that are quick. And the best foliage drives are going to be on the secondary roads that are 35 to 45 miles per hour. So you need to rethink your pacing a little bit. Um, Let me go back to the forum. But again, just some info when you're thinking about planning your trip. I've got, let's see, let's go back another step, because people put things in different forums. And I hope I didn't click the wrong thing there. And computer's being a little wonky right here. Some people will put it into the New England tab, and then they'll drill down further and say go to the New Hampshire tab. They'll go to the Maine tab. So you can always put the question in different places. Have you been there? Let's see what this one is. I always like some of these, how they looking for a review of Roberts Building, Eastern Slope Inn. Um, Not even sure exactly what they're talking about. The Eastern Slope Inn is probably a location in the forums. Do a double search. You know, you can Google a location, and sometimes places will change names. During the pandemic, bed and breakfast closed up. Some of them switched owners and changed names. So sometimes you have to get a little creative and look at the address and see if you can find what it may have been called in the past, and then do a search that way. Um, do a Google search with a couple different things. Pull up the Chamber of Commerce. Oftentimes, that's a great wealth of contact. I don't know, we all get shy now about picking up the telephone and talking to a live person, but honestly, some of those people, they've been at these chambers of commerces, they're locals, they can tell you the story. They can say, yeah, that place kind of fell into disrepair, but now, hey, this new couple moved to town with a great family and they putting money into it and it's going to be really nice. Well, you know, why not be one of the first people to try out a new location? If it's fresh, if it's clean, you know, maybe refurbished, new bathrooms, that kind of thing. So sometimes it does take a little bit of digging, or working with someone like myself where we'll make those phone calls, or we have local contacts. I know people that live in Vermont, that live in New Hampshire, that I can literally pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, you know, have you heard about this business? Did it switch hands? Is it still active? What bed and breakfast still have rooms that will accommodate two couples traveling together, or needs to have two beds so that an adult couple with a teenage daughter can share the same room, or whatever your needs may be, which we all have different travel needs. So reaching out and working with a travel planner or travel advisor can give you a lot of edge over just, you know, and also save you a lot of time out of digging through these, you know, places online, which is why I sometimes pop onto these forums and like to answer some questions. Let me go back to New Hampshire, see if there's any other things I can quickly answer. Um, Flume Gorge for seniors. Here's one, and I should probably answer this one. Their seniors are 75 and 78. Well, again, some people that I know that are 75 to 78 have been on some of my tours, and they're walking, they're taking stairs, they're in great shape. And so it's important to ask them, you know, how far do you walk a day? Are you good with stairs? You know, really explain what it's about. And if you go to the Flume Gorge website, I think you'll see a lot of pictures of the stairs, or, you know, find stair counts. They'll tell you about the bus, sometimes even a phone call, again, to the local Chamber of Commerce. Those people live in these areas. They really know these locations. They visited there. They may be able to easily answer these questions and let you know if there's accommodations. A lot of places are making changes to be more accommodating of people with mobility issues. And I will say it again, I know I've given out this little tip before, but the basin, the waterfalls are much smaller. You're not in a tight, narrow canyon. It may not be the same as the Flume Gorge, but it does have an accessible trail and does take you through beautiful trees, beautiful different sounds of the waterfalls. So it may be a nice alternative to the Flume Gorge. So again, it's just rethinking. The Cake Highway, there's all kinds of waterfalls, and the parking lots to these waterfalls are really close, and the paths, one of the stops, and I'd have to pull out my Kank map, Route 112, it shows the pull-offs, but one of the pull-offs, you can see there's a nice, they've made a really nice paved walkway and some paved, like I want to say overhangs, like a patio with wood railing where you could easily roll someone, walk slowly. It's flat, it's even, and then stand there and listen to the waterfall, see the waterfall. And I think the Kank Route 112 in New Hampshire is a must do in the fall. Just try not to go there on a Saturday and Sunday. Honestly, those are the busiest days, and you will have difficulty finding parking spots. I know sometimes when I'm driving my little bus with my group, I mean, it can be a challenge to find spots that are large enough. You have a lot of people riding motorcycles. You can park along the edges of the road, but then you're having to walk back sometimes quite a ways. And again, on busy weekends, the park system will be out there coning off certain areas because honestly, the parking lots just get full to capacity. And that's not really maybe how you want to spend your fall day either. So again, that's why, I can help you work out a plan so you're not hitting that area, say on a Saturday or Sunday or Columbus Indigenous Peoples Day. Let's pop back. Let's go back to New Hampshire. So again, as far as older people, seniors a loose term. Some seniors probably can walk further than I can, and have probably scaled some of the White Mountains. So it depends on your ability and your mobility. So things to keep in mind. Small towns to visit. I don't know if I've looked at this one before. There are so many small towns in New Hampshire, in Vermont, in upstate New York, along the Hudson River. You could spend even upper tier Massachusetts. The Mohawk Trail goes through several small towns. The thing with Massachusetts again is it's a lot of small towns. It's a little bit more congested, but you still have some really unique pockets. Concord, Massachusetts, where the bridge is that kind of kicked off the Revolutionary War. It's got a really compact, sweet little downtown business area with older restaurants, historic hotels, and businesses there. Um, they've been living in southern New Hampshire. We like walking small towns and have enjoyed. I'm looking for other small towns within a couple hours drive. Get a paper map. I cannot stress enough. I love getting a paper map. It's a great place to start your exploration because then you can lay it out, and depending on where you want to base yourself, or that you liked Littleton, New Hampshire. I mean, just pull out the map and see what might be near Littleton. And then those town names, you can go in and again search the internet. A lot of these small towns, they want your tourism dollars. So they're going to have a little page, they're going to have a Facebook page, they're going to talk about their businesses. They may have an Instagram presence, and you don't have to set up an Instagram account or a YouTube channel to just search YouTube for some of these towns. And people have literally walked through these places, taken videos. We're in an age where there's honestly an overabundance of, it's like information overload. I remember when I was younger and we had to go to the library to plan our family vacations. We had to go to the library and look for a guidebook to check out. We had to look in literally like file drawers where people that had been to these locations would bring back brochures, or we got used to going and finding a phone number for the state tourism office and calling them and requesting a guidebook be mailed to us through the mail, sometimes a couple weeks before you would get that information. And now we have computers, we have so much information. It's almost gone like the other way. It's like digging through the information can get overwhelming. Just like with the small towns, there are so many small towns that I have found. Every year that I go to New Hampshire, I literally pull out my map and try to route myself through some new small towns. But before I do that, especially if I've got other photographers in tow with me, our day is so valuable that I need to know that there's something scenically there, there's something historic there. But that's where these state maps can be super valuable, because on the map, oftentimes they'll mark where the covered bridges are. So that's one thing. Maybe I haven't checked out that covered bridge. Now I can go and look and see if there's some photos of that covered bridge. Maybe there's a town that has a historic site. There's presidents that have been born in both New Hampshire, Vermont, famous people. Atlas Obscura is a great website for some things that are kind of off the beaten path. You do have to do your research again and double check. I mean, some of the obscure places have closed. They don't exist as such anymore if they're an actual like grouping of buildings. So things happen, things change. But do a little bit of digging. Old guidebooks often have information that newer guidebooks haven't picked up. Things fall in and out of kind of fashion. Little towns go into slumps as far as economically, they can't sustain their restaurants, their businesses. So, again, by pulling out the map, you can kind of get an idea of which little towns might be on a route that you're already taking and do some investigating before you get there to know if it's, hey, that's somewhere I want to stop. It looks like they have wow, they've opened a new bakery there and I want to check it out, a new coffee shop. Chamber of Commerce, again, a great source of information, doing these kinds of phone calling, going on Facebook groups. A lot of times you can ask there as well if they're state specific. So I'll probably drop some suggestions here. It looks like some other people have dropped some suggestions. Walpole, Peterborough. Honestly, New Hampshire has really got a wealth of small towns. Even north of Littleton in going, there's a place called Bethlehem, New Hampshire. There's different routes besides the Kank. If you have done the Kank and want to do something that different, there's Route 302 that goes more northerly across the top. Check and look at state parks. There's a lot of wonderful state parks that have great information. That's it for today. I've been on about 20 minutes. I got to run. I've got something else coming up a little bit later. And I'm thinking about restarting my travel podcast. So if you have input on that, love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, guys. And for more, just check out some more of my videos. Thanks, guys.